Hi, Krisserin.
Hi, Kelton.
How you doing?
Oh, man. What a shit week.
Oh, God.
I'm Krisserin Canary.
And I'm Kelton Wright.
Follow our quest to publish our first novels
From first drafts to query letters
through inevitable rejections
and hopefully eventual success.
from California
To Colorado. This is Pen Pals.
How are you doing? Let's start with you because I think you had a good week.
Well, I had a good yesterday. Prior to that, I slept cumulatively maybe 6 hours over like 3 days. I felt miserable. But last night, I finally got a pretty solid night of sleep. And I also yesterday wrote 1,500 words. I wrote the opening scene to the book, which I was really excited about. It was, very exciting when you don't know what the opening scene is to just have it come to you. I was like, oh, what a delight. But how was your week? Tell me all the ways in which it was horrible.
Maybe I'm being dramatic, but I started out the week with a rejection from the Tin House Writers Workshop. So I know. I'm like, you know what? Fine.
Fine.
I didn't want to go to the workshop anyway. No, it's always a bummer when you get one of those. I wish this was better news. We regret to inform you, blah, blah, blah. That was a little bit of a bummer, but I just really struggled getting up in the morning this week. It was really hard. I think I got out of bed into my desk on time once this week. And so I didn't spend a lot of time in front of my computer actually doing the work. It was probably, 30 minutes to 45 minutes a day. So it's just like a little bit here and there. I did come up with a scene that I want to write, which I'm excited about. So once I get to that part of the book, I'll get to generate some new words and that'll be fun. This was a hard week, and I also didn't sleep a ton. So that doesn't help.
Krisserin shared with me the actual rejection letter from Tin House, and it was so nice and friendly. It made me want to stab myself. I was just like, if I got this email, I would be so mad. There's something about rejection where I want the tone to match the reality. When the tone is so sweet, I'm like, this isn't what's happening. Like, this isn't a nice thing. You don't get to make this nice. It drives me crazy. I love when it's so like cut and dry, where it's like, unfortunately, you didn't make it. You were not accepted. And you're like, okay, whatever. I'm sorry you didn't get in. They're fools. And may you get into the next one.
Yeah, I still haven't gotten my rejection from Breadloaf, so I'll wait for that. I did want to start with a little bit of an apology to you.
For what?
I know you probably didn't think anything of it, but as I was editing the episode, I first of all, I called you a capitalist, like it was an insult. When we were talking about how we envision our writing looking, and I asked you, you're like, oh, besides being incredibly wealthy, and I called you a capitalist. I was like, wow, that was really dismissive of me. I think for me, the reason why I said that was because I've never, ever made money from my writing, ever. So, like, the thought of getting rich from it, I'm like, that's never going to happen. But you do make money from your writing. And I think you will definitely become very wealthy from it. So I just wanted to, like, throw that out there as one apology. And then I have a second one.
Speaking of throwing things out there, that is my method. That is the only manifestation I do, is to tell the universe that I would like to be wealthy from this thing. Though universe, cover your ears for a minute. I find it highly unlikely I will become wealthy from my writing, but I don't want to cut myself off before it happens.
The thing
So
is, I think you will become wealthy from your writing. So I shouldn't have been like so dismissive of that, because it is important. I think like we do these things, we want them to be our careers. And so I shouldn't scoff at that. But then the other thing was as I was going through and I realized, I'm like, let's do a book swap. I realized how burned out you are. And I'm like, Kelton, finish your book so I can give you mine. So inconsiderate.
if you watch the YouTube version of that episode, you can see just sheer panic across my face where I'm like, I don't know. At that point too, it was like just like in the beginning of like us not sleeping in this house. And so I was just like, I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I had this huge presentation looming. There was like no work novel. Ben just kept being like, how's your
Oh,
ah,
so anyway, I just wanted to get that off my chest because I want to, be a good friend and a good supportive partner. And sometimes I say things and then afterwards I'm like, that was stupid. So anyhow,
well, no offense taken and all forgiven.
okay, great, great, wonderful. Did you meet your writing goals for this week? Because I forgot. You just wanted to make words, so it sounds
I
like you
wanted to
did.
make words and I did it. I would have liked to make a few more words, but I still have Saturday of this week to do that. And it was so exciting having the kicking off point for the book. I have, speaking about what we're going to talk about today, I have the outline, but the outline doesn't include exactly how things happen. And so it's knowing where the main character starts from was a little murky for and exactly what that opening scene is, because everybody is like, oh, if you don't get them in the first few pages, good luck. And so thinking about how do I position my characters in the first paragraph so that you want to know way more about her. And I feel like I nailed that for a first draft. Obviously, it's like, I know it has to go through all the rounds of edits, but, I felt so good about it that I was happy with the amount of words I got.
When I saw your text come through telling me how much work you got done, I just feel like it was probably bottled up. So
Yeah.
all that time you spend wanting to write and thinking about writing, but not being able to sit down, it's probably just, storing up your reserves so that when you actually get to sit down and do it, it just comes on out.
I also want to shout out 2 listeners of ours who listened to the last podcast and sent me some advice. Speaking of that, like, bottling up and the writing not coming, one of the things I spoke about previously that was driving me kinda crazy is every time I went to write the newsletter, I was faced with all the data about its performance just because that's, like, the homepage for your dashboard. And Charlotte of Baby Brain on Substack and Olivia Munter of the same name on Substack both wrote to me to be like, I have earmarked my drafts page so that I skip right over the data. I don't see any of my stats and I go right into the portal where my actual writing is. And that's how they get around seeing all of the horror of they have all these, like, stock market tickers on your Substack things now where it's like, paid subscribers are going down, and your views are going up because someone hated what you said, it's just like, oh god. So, thank you to Olivia and Charlotte for guiding me on the path of not seeing that ever again. I did feel when I changed that, I felt unlocked on the newsletter, and sleeping helped me feel unlocked on the novel, so what a treat.
What a treat. I love it. I don't remember what my goals were for last week. This week's been horrible.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't write them down last week either.
Okay, well then it's your fault.
It's my fault. It's my fault. Um,
How am I supposed to make my goals, Kelton, if you don't write them down for me?
okay,
Oh
well,
man.
that is because I didn't follow the structure of the things that we were working on. And that is what we are talking about today. Structure, outlines, planning, and the exact opposite of that, pantsing.
That's right. Now, I told my mom that we were going to talk about this today, and she had an assumption about what type each of us were.
Oh,
Do you have a guess what it is?
oh, I'm almost certain that she guessed that you were an outliner and I was a pantser.
Yeah, correct.
And I think to a degree that that mostly was correct for me.
No, it's not. I am not an outliner.
You're not an outline?
Not when I start writing a new story. No, not at all. Not at all. But I haven't started a new story in a while. I've been working on this story for a really long time. So I get myself into a lot of trouble when I'm working on a new story and I just have, you know, the idea of what I want to write about, I am just feeling my way through it for the whole first draft. I just
Wow.
flying by the seat of my pants, letting my characters tell me where they want to go and what they want to do. And then I will go back and try and put some structure on it. But for that first draft, nah, I'm just letting it flow, baby.
I am learning something new about you. So I every time I have been close to one of your writing projects, it has either been after completion of a draft or revisiting a draft. And so I've never talked to you as a writing friend while you're starting something new. So this is fun for me to learn.
It's been a while. I The last new project that I started was a romance novel that I still have
Mhm.
in the back of my head that I do want to work on because it's really fun. Um, and it's set in the desert because all of my stories return to the desert in some way,
Mm.
shape, or form. But I'm just like, wouldn't this be fun? Let me throw in this complication and let me like this character do this and I just play with it. It's playing for me. It's super enjoyable and I do that part in a very casual way. And then I go back and inflict pain on myself afterwards. To your point about the first couple of pages really have to be impactful and draw the reader in, I don't worry about that at all in my first
Yeah.
draft. Like, I could give a shit. I'm going to just get the story down on the page and figure out what I love about it. And then I'll go back and move things around and change things completely in order to give it a structure that is compelling and move the reader through in a way that makes sense. But I don't worry about any of that in the first draft at all.
I mean, I that was how I had operated prior to the novel I'm working on with you. I had tried to start 3, I think 3 other novels in the pantsing method. The idea just came to me and I started writing and I really liked the characters and then it just fizzled and it didn't go anywhere. And I found that I could not, I just like couldn't put one foot in front of the other because I was like, where am I going? And I wanted so badly to be a pantser because I am a pantser with essays. I don't outline an essay. Are you out of your mind? I just sit down and I write it. And it's like, if it's not great, like I might edit the beginning, I might move a paragraph around, but there's not really that same like Truby's 22 steps to your perfect story involved in there. You're just like, does it flow? Does it catch someone? Does it end on a point? And you're like, great, done. And I found that the one like real fiction short story that I finished when I was trying to adapt it and edit it into like change it into sort of the beginning of a novel, I was so attached to how it flowed that I couldn't move things around. And this time, writing scenes that I know I have to move around and I know I have to put them in the outline I wrote has made me less attached to when they happen. And as much as I thought I was not an outliner, I think I might be. And it's also like, babe, you were a project manager. You were like a producer, a managing editor. What part of me thought that I wasn't going to have some organizational system? That I was just going to be like, well, the story just pours out of me. I don't know how it happens. It's just whimsical magic. Like, what a dream for that to be true for me, but it is not. I was fooling myself for over a decade, and now here we are.
When you were describing these other stories that you wrote as a pantser and they just fizzled out, that's happened to me too. I think sometimes stories are good ideas, but they don't make good novels. Like there's not enough meat on the bones for them to actually like become a thing.
Absolutely.
I think that that's what it is for me, and if I'm still interested in the idea and still want to make it work, then I find a way to pants my way through to a full draft. But I have short stories, I've had lots of things that are sitting unfinished, as
Yeah.
drafts. And they might not ever be a complete project on their own. They might just be compost for something else, but that's okay. I think outlining is very valuable and I need it once I have a full draft. Like I need some way to see the structure. I'm a little bit more of a visual person in that respect. I think that's what it is. I cannot visualize something that's not done. Like my husband's
Yep.
a really good good with like, oh, well, if we move this around and he helped with the remodel of the house and like this is how it should look. And I'm like, I can't even picture what this would look like in 3D. So for me, I have to feel my way through. And then once it's all there, then I can be like, oh yeah, like that shouldn't go there, or that chair doesn't belong in that corner. Then I can see it. And when I start moving the furniture around, then I'm like, okay, this feels right, but I have to be in it first. I can't look at it and then just like put it down based on that. So that's probably just a deficiency of mine that I can't see the forest for the trees. Is that the right expression?
Well, is that a deficiency or is this that your operating mode?
It
You
might
know?
just be how I operate.
Since you're not outlining from the beginning, what do you do with your first draft? How do you turn that into an outline? Does it look like an outline? Like, what do you turn it into first? You've talked about using spreadsheets before. So it's like if
Mhm.
someone like you is a pantser who wants to think through their first draft and have it be a more cohesive via using some kind of quote unquote outline,
Mm.
what is your step to doing that?
So I don't think that I could be a pantser without Scrivener. I use Scrivener almost like an outline, right? Because they have folders and files. So I will name those folders and files. And so I can see visually all of the different pieces of my novel. And then from there, it makes it a little bit easier to know what is where and how to move things around and where the scenes are, etc. I think that if I were writing it in a Word document, it would be a nightmare. It would be an absolute nightmare because it's just like
Mhm.
one big blob of text and I wouldn't know where anything is. And I would completely forget about scenes that I'd written or important pieces of the plot that are buried in something else. So I do think that the tool that I'm using allows me to be a bit more of a pantser because it's already structured in a way that allows me to see pieces of the novel. Um, so I highly recommend using Scrivener or figuring out a way to organize your scenes so that you know where everything is. That's my number one recommendation is the tools that you're using are really important. And if you're still writing in Google Sheets and well, Google Sheets, you can put like tabs and stuff. So that might actually be better. But if you're just working in like Microsoft Word, maybe consider something else.
It's been so long since I have used Microsoft Word. I'm a Google Docs girl all the way, but for this novel, it's Scrivener. And same way that you've sort of spoken about it in Google Docs, I feel the enormity of the book in front of me. Whereas with Scrivener, the way that you have to use it, if you're using it correctly, is that each page is a scene. And so it's like I have never thought in such scene work while I'm writing, but now I know it's like this is one scene and it needs to have a driving factor at the end. And if I haven't gotten to that driving factor, I mean, obviously there's like segue scenes and things like that, handoffs, but if I don't feel like there's momentum happening, then I'm like something's not right here. And so it has helped me in that way to use Scrivener itself.
Are you writing your story chronologically or do you
No.
kind of jump around?
I've been jumping around a lot. With my outline, in the outline itself, the opening is like Bren feels a calling to Amanita Keep. And that's it. Like it doesn't say anything about like this is where she is, this is like what she finds, this is what calls to her. I'm leaving that open. And so most of my outline is like um gets in a fight with her fake ally, meets her opponent. You know, it's very it is very methodical in that way where I am sort of save the catting my way through this book. I also like my books to feel like movies, and so it's useful for me to think in those story arcs and steps. This is not a super non-traditional book. This is a commercial enterprise over here, okay?
We're gonna make money. We're gonna be
Yeah.
making money with this book. So let me ask you, I write chronologically. I write my stories from start to finish, which is I think kind of I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm like
That's
in the beginning, the end.
That's what I tried to do. That's every other time I have tried to write a book, that is what I tried to do, and I was like, "I trust the characters are gonna take me on this journey with them." And the characters were just like at the bus stop with me. And they were like, "So who drives the bus?" And I was like, "Oh no, I thought you did." And we're both just standing there waiting for a bus driver. So doing the outline, it's like that helped me think through the whole story, but that doesn't mean I want to write it from the beginning. I have these like driving scenes that I have pictured that are fully cinematic in my head, and I'm like, I can get those out and then go back and do everything else.
You ever feel like your outline is hampering your creativity in any way or restricting your spontaneity while you're writing?
No, not right now. I think that's partially because my outline is so vague. And I also, I'm gonna prioritize what gives me joy over the outline every time. I'm gonna
Yeah.
be like, "Oh, okay, outline, you can wait." And then I'll just be like, "How can I make this part of the outline?"
Mhm.
I don't sit down and look at the outline first. The outline's done. It's in the back of my head. It's on a tab in Google Docs where I have like 3 different versions of an outline actually, where I'm like, the story could do this, the story could do that. And so I'm writing the scenes as they feel right, and then I will map them against that outline. So that for my stickies on the wall that you inspired me to do, that is sort of what's happening. As I get a scene that really feels right, it goes up on the wall, and then I'm moving them around physically on the wall to be like, does this happen here? Does this happen here? Do we ever need to know this? And so it's to me, it has felt like more work, and I think that is actually why I never did an outline before, is because it was way more work. And it's you can also find out pretty quickly if your story doesn't have legs when you try to do an outline because you're like, "Oh, there's nothing here." So it's helped me enormously because this is the first time truly that I've been like, "No, I have a book here." It may not be a great book. It might not be anything anyone wants to read, but it's something I wanna write, and
I want to
I
read
have
it.
it. You
I
are
want to
gonna
read
read
it.
it.
I'm waiting this summer. I'm going to read it.
I know, I know.
Definitely. You know what? I don't think it's more work. I think we all end up having to do that work eventually. I think it's
Mm,
an inescapable part of writing a book. And as you were saying that, I was remembering you talked about studying screenwriting, and obviously a screenplay is a very strict structure and beats that have to happen at specific points in the story. And the hero's journey is kind of the same idea where a hero goes on an adventure and he meets a friend and all of these things happen. And I can see how there is a benefit for having that structure in place, even if you wanted to plot out, the rising action and the climax and all of that
mhm,
in advance of starting a story. Because what ends up happening with me as a pantser is I write all this stuff, sometimes over 100,000 words, and I'm like, oh shit, now I gotta impose a structure on it and start moving stuff around, and it is really hard. Um, and it probably would save some headache if I were to do that pre-work
mhm,
before I started pantsing. So I
mhm.
feel like it all ends up uh, figuring itself out, and it's really about how you work and how it helps you guide your ideas and what you're going to focus on and in your storytelling. So maybe for my next project, I'll try an outline and see if that helps. Because right now I'm in the throes of trying to figure out how to make this multi-generational story with all these flashbacks and interludes and this stuff all flow in a story that has a main plot that happens in real time. So that's been my struggle. But also I'm like, I'm gonna hire an editor and have them show me what to do.
You're like, "What do you think the outline is?"
Yeah. How would you structure this story? These
Um,
writers who write these like brilliant books that have these really smart structures, and you get to the end of it, you're like, "Oh, that was amazing." Like I really am impressed by them. I just don't think I'm that type of writer.
like, I'm not a Donna Tartt, you know? I'm not gonna blow your mind with details and structure. That's just not gonna get that out of me. I was thinking recently about Liz Moore, who wrote The God of the Woods, and how she approaches story ideas. And for her, it's that she starts with people, place, and problem. And if she has those, then she can move forward. And that is what I did with the novel I'm currently working on. It wasn't people first, it was place and problem. And people came secondary from that. And they like percolated up from the ground of the place I had developed. I was like, ah, yes, I can see them clearly. And that to me was really helpful, thinking about those three core tenets of the story. And because the short story I referred to earlier that I was trying to adapt into a novel a few years ago, I didn't actually have a problem. As I was reading through it again, I had great people and I had great place. And there were like little problems, but there was no actual problem. And I was like, "Oh, I'm missing a reason for this to exist." I'm just like I'm peepholing on these characters, just watching them in their everyday lives, but there's no inciting incident that causes a story to come together. And so when I can step back and see those 3 elements, I'm like, "Aha, that's what I need." And I think it was also Liz Moore was talking about because I believe that book jumps around from character to character. It's a mystery. Have you read it?
So it's my book club book that I'm supposed to be reading for a get together with my friends from college, and Sabine is at sleepaway camp this week. And so
Oh
I
god.
open the book and it's like Barbara's missing. She's not in her bunk at camp. And I'm like, nope, put that
Nope,
away.
put that away, we'll
Last
read that
week.
later.
We'll
Well,
read that later.
I'm not gonna
No
give anything away
spoilers.
by saying this, but I believe that it was Liz Moore who said that when she changes from one character to the next is right when that character she's writing is about to give something away. And so she just
Mhm.
stops writing whatever's happening to them so that the story still has forward momentum, which I loved thinking about it that way, just like an easy framework of like as soon as a character is about to step on the tripwire of your reveal, you just stop that scene. You're like, okay, well, we're moving on to a different character.
There's a book, I'm trying to pull it up. I'm not trying to be rude and like look at my phone while we're talking. Worry by Alexandra Tanner. Have you read this
Hmm.
book?
No, I don't know it.
Because you were saying like a book has to have a problem and a place, and it can't just be a glimpse into these people's lives. And this book was just that. It was just like, let me take you along on the journey of these two sisters who are kind of crazy. And I enjoyed reading it, but then I got to the end and I was like,
Yeah, you're like, what?
man, what happened? Nothing happened. And I guess it's also kind of like a Murakami novel, right? It's like just
Yeah,
vibes. Which I
just
cannot
vibes.
stand. And I think you have to be a really good writer to pull that off. But similar to Liz Moore, I like the why now question. These people are living their lives. Why are we entering the scene now? Why are we being introduced to them now? What's going on? What is the inciting incident that is bringing all of these things to a head? And that I think really helps me start writing.
Yeah.
Um, but I like the people, place, problem structure.
I love thinking about the fact that they've just been living this whole time. That like we're just coming in for the book part. But they had normal lives, with all their tribulations, blah, blah, blah. But it's like there's a reason this is where the book starts.
Yeah.
Um, oh, that's so
So
sweet. All my characters have just been hanging out all this time.
they're waiting for you. Who said that? There was a writer who said that.
Is that Liz Gilbert?
No,
I mean, she has definitely said something like that.
you're like characters are like floating around, waiting for you to pluck them into existence. I love the
Yeah,
idea of it.
she has said that like, an idea comes to you and if you don't act on it, it will go to someone else. And she said that specifically, I think about I don't believe
Don't
this,
believe
but
that.
she said that Anne Patchett wrote this wonderful book called State of Wonder, which is about a middle-aged woman who goes to the jungle. That's kind of all you need to know as a premise. And Elizabeth Gilbert had that idea and didn't act on it, and then Anne Patchett wrote State of Wonder, and I always wondered if Anne Patchett was
Probably
like,
way better than Liz
"You?
Gilbert could have written it. There's no, yeah, like,
Oh, your idea just floated over to me." I mean, it's like
yeah.
it's a sweet motivator if that compels you to be like, "I want to bring this idea to life before it goes to someone else to help it." But that said, I'm like, I really look at the characters who are stuck in my drafts and I'm like, "I'm sorry. I will find a way to get you out of there. I will get you out of there." I like talk to them sometimes 'Cause I'm just like, ugh, I have this, like, space opera that I really love that I, like, can't wait to write one day. I just don't have everything I need for it. And one of the characters, I just, like, talk to her when I'm in the woods because 'cause I'm like, "I know that you are, like, rampaging. You are so excited to be on the page." She's, like, my most impulsive character I've ever written, and she's just crawling out of the screen, and I'm like, "It's not your turn. You gotta hang out." Bren has been waiting to be written for so long, and she finally has her book, so just hang out.
I also think of my characters that they're just like living their lives waiting for me to come along, out in the desert in her romance bookstore, waiting for me to tell her love story. And they're real people to me. I'm sure your characters are real people to you. But when I finally sat down to write Unforgettable, which is the speculative fiction novel that you read, Kelton, I've been thinking about it for 11 years. And so I sat down to write it and I wrote it so fast
Yeah.
because I just been thinking about it for so long. So your space opera friend will get her chance to shine. And I love a space opera. Can't wait to read
Yeah.
it.
I know, I'm so excited to write it. It's definitely
Ugh.
gonna be my smuttiest novel.
How does one smut in space?
Girl. I mean, these are the details that take decades to think through, okay?
Is this what you've been thinking about?
Yeah, ever since I interviewed Scott Kelly about his time in space, I was just like, I actually have more questions.
You interviewed Scott Kelly?
I did. Yeah. I think about that interview all the time while having a baby because we were talking about flying fighter jets and how do you sleep the night before you actually have to get in an F-14. And he was like, "Oh, you don't, but you close your eyes and you just rest." And he's like, and that's it. You just get rest when you can. It doesn't have to be sleep and you shouldn't put the pressure on yourself to sleep. You're just resting. And now that is my mantra through parenthood. I'm like, "Don't worry about sleep. You're just resting."
The worst thing you can do when you can't sleep is fixate on the fact that you can't sleep. So,
Mhm. Mhm. It's like, go
uh,
to your favorite daydream and just move the plot forward.
yeah,
Bring your
it's
little
true.
mind sims back from wherever they were waiting, and so reenact your favorite made up story about yourself. Before we close out talking about pantsing and outlining, I do want to ask our listeners to tell us their methods. You can DM us. We'll give you all the information at the end. You can email us. You know where to find us, but please tell me how you approach your writing, especially if you do it in any sort of strange fashion. If you have any peculiarities you would like to share, I would like to hear them. But I believe we have something kind of fun to move toward, Chris Aaron.
Yeah. So last week we asked our listeners to send us in some questions and we got some. So I
Yay!
will, I know, it's so exciting to hear from people. So the first one is from Steph Gordo, who
Hi,
is
Steph.
wonderful. And not only wrote us a question, but then I went on to our Apple Podcasts page and she left a review. So thank you, Steph.
Oh, you're the best.
Who's the best? Okay, so her question is, how does inspiration hit you for things that you write or create? Where does your inspiration come from?
I try to not think about inspiration too much. In that, it's kind of like if you chase it down, it becomes more ephemeral and more hard to grab. But if I look back at my projects, inevitably place is an enormous inspiration for me and the history of place. So looking at photographs of LA through history from when it was, you know, beautiful, green, lush, to when there were the lifted boardwalks over traffic, to like the development of the freeways, like thinking about all of the ways that it comes to be. Same with where I live now in the mountains. It has a much smaller development footprint, but thinking about especially the Ute tribes that hunted here, our valley is relatively uninhabitable. So there weren't actually many people who lived here, but it was a great summer hunting grounds. And then as, it was colonized and became like a mining area, like seeing it through history and thinking about all the people. I specifically think often about all the people who died there. So many people have died everywhere in so many outrageous ways. and like what was the story of how they came to live there and how they came to die there. Specifically, like the story I'm writing now was really inspired by my research on our local cemetery. Um, and I spent like a month writing a piece about our cemetery here because I looked up every single person I could find. And then I was just deep in the Colorado archives looking for any mention of this town and death or funeral or illness and seeing like just all of these people. And it was so inspiring to me about like, okay, what is the history of this place? So that for me, that's like a core inspiration. And when I am on the hunt for inspiration, I restart the artist's way.
I've never done the artist's way.
Oh, I've never done the whole thing. Yeah, never mind. Who finishes it? I always get to like week 8 and I'm like, but that's the thing is like by week 8, my juices they're back, they're running. We've got 4 locomotives on this train. We are gunning for the horizon. So I don't have to finish the book. I'm like, I know I have what I need to do what I want.
Nice.
Um, Yeah, so that's usually the inspiration for me is history of place, or I do the homework of inspiration with Julia Cameron.
You stole my answer. Place is my inspiration for sure. Not only place, but places that are really kind of like your newsletter, chosen places, the places that people choose to inhabit that are really out there and different, and the type of people who choose to go and live in them. Growing up in the desert has such a huge imprint on me as a child. And I lived there from the age, I think, of like 6 until I was 11. And we had a whole bunch of land and horses and animals. And I was just allowed to free roam. And my parents would just say, come home when the sun goes down, you know? And so me and my friends, we would just explore and create stories in our head about the mountains, the history of the mountains, and the people who live there. And so there's a lot of imagination, creativity in my childhood. And I think that's why I'm so enamored with the desert, because so much of my spirit was born there. And the desert is definitely a huge inspiration for me. But even the parts of LA that I grew up in, San Gabriel Valley, that has this history of agriculture and a blend to this day of white and brown and black people who all came in the mid 20th century to inhabit those areas just out of the city. I think all of those things are so fascinating. And then when I went to Italy recently, I went to all of these different towns and had an idea for a short story come up from there. There's actually a science fiction short story, but set in Tuscany. So for me, place is huge. Place is definitely the biggest inspiration for me. I have to be able to fully inhabit that place because I'm not a visual person. So I have to kind of been there. Even when I'm writing places that I've never been, I will go on YouTube and do the street walkthroughs where people are just like walking around with their cameras and their
Mhm.
microphones and recording the sounds and people going about their day. So that is definitely how I get my ideas. But I think we have time for maybe one more question. You want to do one more before we share goals?
Sure.
Okay. Are there any aspects of writing that you struggle with in particular, any crutches that you return to? I have the hardest time describing and showing emotion in the body and trying to make people understand how people are feeling through their physical reactions. And I just always default to the same things and I hate it. I feel like I describe things the same way a lot and I have to go back and be like, oh, I used this metaphor again. Like, cut this shit out.
Well, I will tell you a trick I use for what you're describing. I go and watch my favorite scenes from movies that evoke that feeling in me.
Mhm.
So, like, if I'm writing about someone's first kiss, I watch Nick and Jess's first kiss from New Girl because I'm like, that's what I'm going after.
I hate
Um,
them. I hate that show.
I mean,
I used to love it. I used to
uh,
love it. It's like,
that kiss stands out in history to me, though, as like one of the best on screen TV kisses.
I think they're so gross.
Look, I'm not saying they're great. I'm
For me
saying
to
the
yuck
kiss
your
is
yum.
great. What do I mean, I think one of the things I struggle with inevitably is tense. Struggle with tense, and I don't have a fix for it. Good luck to my editor should I find one. But I recently came up against a realization that there might be a character in my book who is telling it, and you won't know that until the end. Um, and thinking about that has kind of messed with my head a little while I'm writing, and I'm like, "Stop it. Stop it. Don't worry about it. Like, just get that out of there. If that's meant to be, we'll figure it out later." But tense is really hard for me, and in that short story I keep talking about, I changed the tense and the POV like 4 times. I was just like, What is the right way to tell this story?" And it's so hard to change those. That for me is a big struggle, and I think that's just because I don't have a lot of practice writing fiction. I haven't written a lot of stories. And so that, those elements I think are easier over time as you kind of know how to maneuver them, but I struggle with that and I try just not to think about it.
I'm actually struggling with tense in my current novel. I keep going back and forth to making it present tense, which I've never liked. Like reading
Mhm.
present tense, a lot of YA is written in present tense and I've never truly loved it, but it doesn't feel right to write it in like a close past tense either. So I will be editing and I'll be changing the tenses all over the place. But I do think it's something that another person can very easily tell you. Because
Yeah.
I know that when I read other people's work and the tenses are all over the place, I'm like, no, 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 it needs to be in this tense. And they're like, okay, cool. So I feel
Yeah.
like that's a problem
It'll
you'll
be
be able to solve
sorted
with
for
some help.
me.
Yeah, I'll help you.
Yeah.
Of course.
I sort of love trying to figure out how people feel in their body. Like I recently wrote a scene where one of my characters falls on their face. And so I'm not lying, I hit myself in the face.
You
I
would.
just smacked myself in the face because I was like, "Why with a paperback, not like a hardcover?" Because I was like, "What does it feel like?" Because I can think about what it feels like, but what does it really feel like when it happens? You're like, "Whap! Aha! Aha! Okay, there we go.
Oh my goodness. Well, that was fun. We definitely have more questions. We'll save them for the next episode and we should talk about our goals.
Hit me. What's your goal?" Hit me with a soft paperback.
My goal for this week, I want to write that scene. I want to write that. There's a scene that I had written a long time ago, and I actually read it for the final reading for my fellowship. And it's a graphic scene that happens in a bar. And the way that I've written it, it's kind of like a downer scene. She goes to a bar, she picks up a guy, the interaction doesn't go well, they get into a fight. But it happens at the end of her marriage and her job, and everything's imploding. It's her rock bottom. And I just want her to have like one fantastic flare out, like one moment of just like, fuck it all, leaving everything on the dance floor, just pure, I don't care anymore. And I'm going to just go for it before everything else crashing down. So I'm going to write that. I need to get into a state of euphoria to write that. And that is I think my goal for next week. I'm closing in on the third part of the book to revise it. And I remember what my goals were for last week. I was going to figure out editing
Right.
and workshops and stuff. So I'm going to do that this week. I'm going to
Right.
do that this week. How about you? What
Yeah.
are your
I
goals?
Well, my first goal is to write down what your goals are.
Thank you. Thanks, Mom.
Um, okay, so my goal this week is 3,000 words, and I'll tell you why. Um, I closed out
You can do it. You can do it.
a client this week. I finished building out a presentation for another client that I have to give next week. And so we did the test run and I feel really good about it. And so all I have to do is show up to the 2 times I have to present it. And for my other 2 existing clients, work is minimal this coming week. And so I get my Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, and now I will have a lot of work to do. So there's no reason for me not to start those days with the novel.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday.
Saturday sort of has to be a newsletter day inevitably,
Okay.
and like part of Tuesday is also newsletter day, but Wednesday and Thursday are guaranteed novel days.
Okay. So you got an average 1,000 words a day next week.
Yeah, which
Okay.
I think I can do.
I want a text. I
Okay,
want a text message confirmation that it's happening or that it's
great.
not happening. Okay. All right. Those are our goals. Amazing.
Yay.
Yay. So a reminder, we want to hear about your pantsing or outlining or whatever you do. Please let us know. We want to hear about it.
Yeah, keep the questions coming for us. We're going to have, I think it seems like kind of an ongoing Q&A feature, which I think is a delight.
Yeah, we have like 10 more.
Ooh,
So
ooh.
we got a lot. I thought we'd have more time to answer more questions during this episode. Maybe we need another bonus episode to talk about them.
Where can the people talk to us?
You can email us at officialpenpalspod@gmail.com. Find us on Instagram or TikTok. We're on TikTok at penpalspod. And yeah, if you wouldn't mind giving us a review, we love those too.
Thank you to everyone who has been sharing the podcast. That is how podcasts get to be successful. So if you like this, please send it to your friends, subscribe, and rate and review. You know how it works in the digital age of algorithmic hell. And we'll be here writing.
In hell. No, I'm just kidding.
First circle only.
I don't know what that means. I'm not Catholic.
You didn't read Dante's Inferno?
College. It was a long time ago. I skimmed everything in college.
I loved thinking of hell as a tiered endeavor. All right, let's get out of here.
All right. Have a good week. Happy writing.
Happy writing.